Hello, everyone. This is Alan Levy, amateur radio call sign KH7AL, bringing you another edition of the Diet Soda podcast, where we meet with some of our summits on the air activators and chasers in an attempt to try to understand what it is about this program that combines amateur radio, summit seekers, and chasers, something that we all thoroughly enjoy and participate in. And my special guest today, all the way from Kansas, is Gary and Martha. And if anyone's been in summits on the air for more than a minute, you probably have Gary and Martha in your logbooks because they are currently the world number 5 and number 11 chasers on the honor roll worldwide. So Gary, you have over 263,000 chaser points, and Martha just right behind them, biting at his heels at 221,000 chaser points. So welcome, both of you. Thank you so much for joining me on this third edition of Diet Soda.
Thanks for inviting us.
Well, if you could just give me a little, we like to kind of go back and see where both your ham journeys started. And if you could just give us a little brief intro into that. And Gary, again, from what I saw on your QRZ site, maybe you can kind of, I'll tease you up here a little bit. How did flying a kite get you into ham radio?
Well, I was about 10 years old, and a neighborhood kid and I were down flying a kite about 2 blocks from home, and we managed to get that caught in a ham's beam antenna. And he was an electrician and a gruff old guy, and so we had to go knock on his door and tell him we had a kite caught up in his antenna, and he kind of looked up there at it and laughed, and he said, I'll go get it. So he got his climbing belt out and went up the tower and managed to save the kite. But then he mentioned, would you like to see what that antenna is hooked to? And so he took us down into the basement, and he had a little corner room with his call sign on the door, and inside the door was all of his ham equipment. And that was my mentor, and that's W0 Echo Baker Baker. And that's the call sign that we use on our field day events and so forth. And I have a club under that call sign too, which is the Kickapoo QRP Amateur Radio Club. So that's how I got started, and that's how I got started in ham radio, but it was a number of years later before I finally got a license. So that's it for me.
Yeah. How about yourself, Martha?
When I was in high school, my brother got his amateur radio license, and I helped him study for that. By the time all was said and done, I wanted to get the license as well, but my parents said, no, girls don't do that. So I gave up on it at that point in time. And then after my last child was born, a number of years later, in 1971, I decided it was time for me to get my license. So I went to a club that was giving a class and got the license in April of that year and have been at it ever since.
That's great. So awesome that you persevered there, even though it wasn't a girl's thing to do. I'm glad you kept with it. And boy, have the times changed since then, I'm sure. Very good. Thank you for the quick background and how you got into Summits on the Air or ham radio. And then fast forward, Summits on the Air has come along. I'm sure you've done a few things with ham radio since then. I don't know if either of you are contesters or what kind of led you into finding Summits on the Air.
Well, we're not really contesters. Martha was into HF nets there for a while, and I was chasing DX off and on, but I was not a real serious DX chaser. I was more into the building side of things as far as projects related to ham radio. But what got us started into SOTA, we have a weekly breakfast gathering at a local restaurant. And one day, one of the guys mentioned he had been reading about this thing called SOTA, and we got to talking about it. And 3 of us decided we were going to find out what it was all about, and we were going to go do an activation. And the activation we chose was a place in Arkansas called Sugarloaf Mountain. And this mountain was an island in the middle of a lake near Clinton, Arkansas. So we needed a boat to go do that. And He, the one talking about SOTA, happened to have a boat. He was an avid fisherman. So we drove down there the next week and drove out to the lake early in the morning, and it was a foggy morning, and there was this island out there you could see in the lake, and it was mostly covered in fog, and it was kind of a spooky place. But we went ahead and got in the boat, and we went around the island clockwise, and all of a sudden we found there was a dock over there, so we docked and climbed up this mountain, which was 501 feet tall, so it just qualified. And we had no clue of what we were really doing. We just started trying to make some contacts, and so we were the first ones to activate that particular place too. And the only thing on the island at all in the way of life was birds and black biting flies. And of course, we didn't bring any bug spray or anything, so they were chewing on us pretty good. And about 11 o'clock or so, there was 3 or 4 seniors that come up the trail hiking, and that's what they did for their exercise. And we got to talking to them. But that was our first activation, and so we kind of thought that was fun. And Martha wasn't there, by the way. She didn't go on that one. But a few months later, I got her.
Sounds like she had better sense.
Yeah,
Yes.
I kind of drug her in there in a roundabout way. I'll let her probably tell you about that, but that's on a different summit altogether in Missouri that we got her started. But I got hooked on the chasing part of it too, and that was in, I think, around September of 2012 is where I started doing the SOTA thing, and I've been there ever since. It's been a lot of fun.
So your first activation, maritime mobile to get somewhere, and then fighting off black flies. So I've heard of a couple of people, their first activation, I was surprised it wasn't their only. Enough to deter you from trying again. So that's good. How about you, Martha?
The funny part of that was the three of us, the guy that took the lead, he was not in the best of health. And the guy that was in the middle, he had just had a knee replacement probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 months earlier, and he was carrying a 50-pound pack of radio equipment. And I brought up the rear. And of course, this was in Arkansas, and as we were hiking up there, I got out my cell phone and I had some music on there. So I started playing dueling banjos just to make, set the tone for the hike. So that's how that got started.
That's great. You gotta have a sense of humor when you're enduring some hardships there.
And the thing was that they didn't realize that they needed to each one of them get 4 contacts and some of that stuff in order to actually make that a legitimate activation. So they show up as having activated that, I think being the first ones to activate it, but they got no credit for it because they didn't know about that stuff at that point.
We thought we were all supposed to use the same call sign. I mean, since then, I looked it up a little while ago. It's only been activated 5 times. So that tells you how difficult it is to get to that particular place.
Like most things with ham radio, when you get dumped into something, let me just I'll figure it out along the way. AE7AP Rob here just reenacted his first activation 10 years on the anniversary this past week. Him and Barb hiked from the doorstep 7 miles up to the South Helena Ridge to go reenact that initial one. A little bit lighter pack this time. They weren't packing big radios and batteries, so made it a little bit better on him. But yes, the first outing is, I know mine was cumbersome and very nerve-wracking, and I was just trying to figure things out, but got through it and definitely set the hook, and I've enjoyed many more activations along the way. So 2 parts of this, your guys' chasing efforts, I would really like to dig into that. But you're both Summit's goats. You've surpassed 1,000 points and you've been very active. All right. So this is looking at SOTL.AS, and first off, you're both sitting at 1,318 points, but Gary has a couple more activations under his belt, which don't know how we did that, but you guys have both ended up at the same amount of points. So I'm guessing you guys are always together doing activations. Is that right?
Yes, we do everything together. That way we can split the load.
Well, he actually started activating ahead of me. And the reason I got into the chasing even was because he would call me downstairs because somebody got on that only had 3 contacts was looking for a 4th contact, is come down and give them a 4th contact. So I did. And then we were coming home from Ozark Con in Branson, Missouri one day, and he had me get on and give somebody a contact while we were driving. And I just decided about that time, well, maybe I might as well start writing these down and go ahead recording them and start chasing. Well, we also, I think on that, one of those times was one of those times where he had an activation where I had stayed down at the foot of the summit in the car. I wasn't particularly interested in activating. So I stayed down there, and all of a sudden the car kind of bounced, and I looked out, and there was this humongous white dog that was up on the side of the car looking at me. And I thought, oh my goodness, what have we got here? And I talked to it just through the window. And finally, I rolled the window down and it flopped over on its back. So I thought, okay, this is going to be a friendly dog. Well, about that time, Gary calls me on 2 meters from the top of the mountain, wondering if I will get out and look and see if this cable that he didn't have with him on top of the mountain was in the back of the car. So I decided, okay, I think I can get out. And so I got out, and the dog was nice. I was able to pet it. If I told it to get down, it got down. So we were fine. I looked, and of course, cable wasn't there. He figured out it was back in the room. So I said,
Oops.
yeah. So he says, okay, bring up the KX2. So
KX3 at that
or
point.
KX3, something like that. At any rate, so I grabbed that. I said, okay, I'll meet you halfway up. Well, the dog accompanies me, and we head up the mountain. About halfway up, I meet him, and I decide, oh, what the heck? The dog and I will just go ahead and go with him up to the top. So we went up the top. The dog behaved himself. If somebody told him to leave, well, he left. And otherwise, he just wandered around, but he stayed with us all the time. And I kind of paid attention to what they were doing. And I think later that day, we finished that activation, came down. Later that day, he and another guy went on over to this other summit, and I stayed in the car for that one too, mainly because it was really a bushwhack. And then from that time on, I went ahead and activated with him. And the way we ended up with the same points was just before we were going to make mountain goat, which was a surprise to us. Until a year before that, I hadn't realized that we actually were within reach of it. So I looked at it and I told him, I said, you know what? We can make mountain goat, probably do it next year. And so we kind of planned it to do it. But we did one activation in Montana where I did the activation and he stayed out of it. And that brought us to an even number of points as a result. And then from then on, we went ahead and finished up the mountain goat that way. But that's how I got into the whole mess. Compliments of a dog and a missed piece of equipment.
Did you ever find? I got the happy ending story. Did we find the owners of the dog?
No, the next year we went there and he was gone. I think it was somebody that lived across the highway, but who knows? Out there in the middle of Missouri, you don't know anything about what's going on around you hardly. So we don't know who it belonged to, but it was a good dog.
Well, yeah, thank you on behalf of everyone who needed that 4th activator chaser points, Martha. So you've been there and helped a lot of people, I'm sure.
One of the other things I might mention too is that Martha and I can both give people 2 contacts, enough to make 4 contacts. We're both trustees of a club call sign. And I checked with the guys in Europe about that, and they said, yes, that's legal to do. So if somebody's on a summit and they're having a really tough time and they need one more contact or two more contacts, we can give them their second, third, or fourth contact and to get them off the summit if they need to get off there.
Good to know.
Keep that in mind. If you need a contact, post it on the SOTA watch, and we'll try to get you again.
That's great. Yeah, you're worth two each. So
we can give you the 4.
so you're in Kansas, just northwest of Kansas City in little town Leavenworth area there. And I looked it up because looking at the map, you're pretty centrally located, almost the center of the lower 48. How does that help you with your chasing there, in the States? Is that a good spot to be working coast to coast and kind of central time zone?
It's good and it's kind of bad in some ways too. We catch all of the Eastern guys, early in the morning, and around noon it gets really busy because they're coming from both sides of this country by that time. And then in the afternoons and evenings, we start losing the Eastern people and start picking up a lot of the Western activators. It is a good place, except here recently I noticed that a lot of the 10-meter signals and 12-meter signals are going right over us. So we're not hearing a lot of those people being in the middle of the country. And one of the downsides of being in the middle like this, you tend to wear out antenna rotors. And because of that, I've had to replace the rotor 2 or 3 times now because it's one way or the other, back and forth, back and forth. So it gets a lot of use.
I know you mentioned you're affiliated with the Whiskey Zero Charlie as far as your activation points or what association you're claiming, I guess. But again, you're kind of right in the middle there, and from the stats there, it looks like you've been heading more southeast from you there to get into some mountains. But I did look. It looks like you had, I think, 6 or so activations, or yeah, in Colorado. What's drug you down that part of the neck of the woods? Is there family or just some more fun to be had down that way?
Well, the closest summits to us are down in the Ozark Mountains in northern Arkansas and Missouri. And we go down there once a year for this event called Ozark Con, which is a QRP conference, which is an extremely good conference. And we participate in that every April. But there's a number of SOTA summits within an hour's drive from Branson, Missouri, where that's held. So we get those in, and the rest of the time we're going to Hamfest like Huntsville, Alabama, Oklahoma. We go down to a place called Mena, Arkansas, and there's a number of summits. It's right on the Oklahoma-Arkansas border, and there's about 6 or 8 very high point summits right through that stretch of highway of about 40 miles. So that's the reason we tend to go down to the southeast. We used to go more out to the southwest in Colorado when we were into the flying of hot air balloons, but we haven't done that for a while, so we're not really heading that way that much. Of course, when we come up to Montana to visit our daughter and her family up there near Helena, we try to hit several summits while we're up that direction too. But we've been all over the central parts of the United States and as far east as Kentucky and Tennessee and Alabama and Ohio doing activations. So, like I said, when we go out on our trips, we try to plan to hit summits because that's our best shot at doing activations.
No, I was going to ask you because I've recognized a theme with people that get into SOTA and who also get a chance to travel, outside of the normal area. That SOTA is just kind of part of the travel plan, and so what I've found just locally is that it will help you go explore places you wouldn't normally see. So as you guys have gone to these different ham fests and things, is that kind of the normal routine? Okay, this is where we're going to stay at, and okay, what summits are around?
Yeah, that's a lot of it. We've worked out a routine where we stay in certain locations every time we're out in that direction. So we know what summits are around us that we can get to and still do the main reason why we're there besides doing summits. And so we've pretty much got a good series of summits we try to do every year because we make some of the similar trips every year to the same locations like Huntsville and so forth. And and Mena, Arkansas, and of course Montana. So yeah, we try to get a certain number of summits in every year, and if we happen to catch a new one somewhere, that's good too.
I did notice. I just happened to click on the map earlier and notice we've activated a couple, the same mountain, Magazine Mountain in Arkansas.
Yes, that's one of our favorites.
Yeah. Well, when I was there, it was socked in, cold, and snowing, very lightly snowing. So it was in January. I was on my way to Alabama for some training with the Air Force, but stopped in there along the way. And then I think it was the highest point in Alabama as well. I think it's Cheaha Mountain.
Chiaha Mountain, yes, we've activated that one also.
That was a nice activation, drive up and great views of the surrounding area. So just happened to notice those two that we'd been on the same mountain. So just wanted to point that out. One thing in your QRZ, sounds like you have a lot of hobbies. How do you guys rank ham radio amongst those? Like where is it in the importance level?
Well, to me personally, it's my number one pastime. I I've been in electronics essentially from the time I got the kite caught in the antenna. So that sparked my interest, and I've been working and dealing with electronics ever since. And of course, that was our career too with the Xerox Corporation for 32 years and so forth. And the Army, I was in the communications and electronics in the Army too. So I've been pretty much there all that particular time, and I continue to do it now after we retired. Now I've been retired almost 20 years, and I continually work with the hobby and building stuff all the time. And Martha and I do a club building project with our club every month. We host that, and so we try to pass on some of those skills and so forth, and to the members of the club, and they're having a good time doing that. So yeah, I'm in electronics, and that's my number one thing. Martha can answer for herself.
Okay. With me, of course, I do quilting. I do a lot of counted cross stitch needlework. And I also am an paid accompanist for church in my area. And I also substitute on the organ whenever is necessary as well. That what I make from that playing the piano and the organ is part of what allows us to travel as much as we do, because I just put that into a travel fund. So it's not necessarily more important than amateur radio, but it's right up there with it. So I'm kind of, you know, equal right with it because that allows me to do what I want to do. The quilting, the needlework, all that stuff, that's a fun hobby and I enjoy it, but it doesn't take time away from the radios at all. So between, so to speak, my job, if you want to call it that, and the amateur radio, well, that's about equal because the one allows the other to happen.
Excellent. I wanted to share another photo, if we could, here real quick, off of your QRZ site. I love your guys' photo here. You said you had done that for a while.
We started that, I think, in 1990. We were visiting some friends, which are in that picture there, down in Albuquerque for the big hot air balloon fiesta that goes on every year. And one of the balloons happened to land close to where we were, and they were needing crew members. So we volunteered and spent that week helping with the balloons. And the next year, this particular balloon, we found out some friends of ours was the crew for that balloon, and we got hooked into being part of that crew for the next about 17 or so years. And we flew balloons all over New Mexico and Arizona, Utah, Colorado, just places like that, and made a lot of trips out to the Southwest doing that. But it also allowed us to get in some SOTA activations too. There were several nice activations that we were able to do along the way. So it kind of worked in conjunction with that. And we did that essentially for 19 years. And finally, the balloon that you're looking at there, the owner became too old and had health issues and decided to sell it off. So that was a good time to get out of that and just focus on ham radio. And I don't know if you know it or not, but those hot air balloons are not exactly light. When they're not inflated, they're about 900 pounds of dead weight. So you have to have a crew of about 6 or 8 to really handle those things effectively, and they're only lighter than air when they're inflated and heated. But
All right, I got two follow-on questions for you. First one, have you ever talked ham radio, hot air balloon mobile, I guess is what you would call it?
we do. So there's a good number of balloon pilots that have a technician license, and you always have to communicate with your ground crew. So they have handheld radios. And one year, the pilots every year get a package of information from the people that run the Fiesta. And that one year, they had 2 Bofang radios in there in the package, one for the people on the ground, one for the pilot. And they were programmed with the balloon Fiesta frequencies, but they were later reprogrammed for the ham frequencies. But yeah, there's a lot of times when you need to communicate with your ground crew, so you do it by radio, and ham radio is a good way to do that.
Okay. And then I guess I don't know where I came up with this, but like I know summits on the air, you have to be on the summit to be able to activate, so this wouldn't work. But parks on the air, if you're within the boundary of a park from a balloon, would that count?
Probably not. I don't know it. I haven't read the information on parks on the air in that regard. Whether you have to,
I just wonder if you just floated across to state park or national park. Yeah.
if you tethered the balloon to a tree or something and floated up about 75 feet or so, I suppose you're still attached to the summit or the park. I never thought about it. It would not work for SOTA.
People would love to have an unobstructed antenna from any height. So, just drop an end-fed wire out of the basket there and working mobile from around the world, and parks on there. Who knows?
You never know. A funny thing, though, one of the guys that we got into ham radio while he was stationed here at Fort Leavenworth moved to North Carolina, and he is now a private pilot at the moment and flies charter jets. And on one of our activations, we worked him from his jet. He was climbing up out of I guess it was Wyoming, and he was at 20,000 feet at the time. And so he enjoys trying to make contacts with parks on the air and SOTA when possible while he's flying.
I always try to catch those air aviation mobile folks, but there's always seems to be a pile up. So you got to be at the right spot at the right time. If I haven't said already, thank you both, because you were both in my top 5 chasers. If any summit I've been on, Gary, you've been there 61 times. Martha, you've chased me 41 times, as far as the logbook's telling me here. So thank you both for that. And I'm sure, like I said before, you're in a bunch of folks' logbooks for chasing. How do you get on the radio so much to be able to chase and gather all these points that you two have accumulated?
It's almost like I live in front of the radio during the day.
That's what I was wondering.
It gives me a chance to be downstairs, not only on the radio, but building a little project too at the same time. So I'm more than just chasing usually. I'm also working on some little project. So I'm there probably more than Martha is. And when I need her to come down and work somebody, she'll slip down there and do that, of course. But I'm on the radio basically from about 8 or 9 in the morning until around 5 o'clock. And I pretty much try to cut it off at 5 o'clock. But then here during the winter, I decided to put a little KX3 up by my easy chair in the TV room and run a end-fed wire out the front door, and it seems to work pretty good because I can work guys, from my easy chair watching TV sometimes too.
KX3 from the easy chair. That's the way to do it.
That's right. It works great.
And do you also do, I think you mentioned you do mobile as well?
Yeah, we've got a radio in the car, and we've got it set up to where we can easily work SOTA activators from the car as we're moving. The driver drives and the passenger operates the radio, and we can pass the microphone back and forth and make our contacts. And she also does the logging.
The home station, what's that consist of? The main rig in the shack?
Well, in the last few years, the main rig now has been the ICOM 7300, and the backup rig for that would be either a Kenwood TS 2000 or a Kenwood TS 940.
Okay. And then the antenna, you mentioned the rotators involved, so you must have a directional of some sort?
For HF on 40 meters and 30 meters, we use a dipole. And for 20 and above, we've got a Mosley TA33 beam with the 12 and 17 meter element added onto it. The antenna itself is around 60 years old, but I've rebuilt it one time and it just continues to work. It's just a great antenna.
Yeah. Why upgrade? Keep it going. That's great.
Yeah, it just does what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, it's on a 45,
50-foot tower.
50-foot tower. It's on a 50-foot tower. And we don't use any amplifiers. We've got amplifiers, but none of them are hooked up. So we just operate barefoot. Whatever the rig will put out, why that's what we got.
100 watts or less. That's all I ever run.
It's working, so I wouldn't change a thing. So that's great. Let's see here. So activator stats, you're chasing CW sideband, but on your activator stats, I thought this was just something noteworthy. 97% of your contacts from activations are sideband, and then about 80% of those are 20 meters. So do you just don't like to, you're still doing some CW in the field, but do you just prefer talking to folks when you're out on a summit?
Well, when you have two activators trying to use the same radio, we have headsets that are attached to a box to tie them together, and that's one headset basically going to the radio. So we can both hear the same thing, and we just have to push our own individual push to talk button to make a contact, and it's faster to do that than trying to do it on CW and pass the key back and forth and so forth. And so we've been very successful at doing it with sideband, so we just continue to do that.
That sounds, again, like it's working great. I wouldn't change a thing. That's great that you had that setup too, where you can both, you're both hearing what's going on, and you both have a push to talk too. So the whole headset mic.
Yep.
I guess for your SOTA activations, what is your standard setup there for radio and antenna?
Typically, we use a Yaesu 857D for the radio, with the backup being a KX3 or a KX2 if necessary. And we use a 40-20 trap dipole and a vertical that's just started using here recently for 40 and 20 and other bands above that. Most of the time we use dipoles of one form or another for our antennas. Yeah. And they're easy to put up usually, and we've got lots of trees around our area wherever we activate at. We're not on some of these 11 and 14,000 foot summits where we don't have trees.
Yeah, you have to get a little creative. Do you have, just for some pro tips for folks, any kind of essential gear that recommend, or I guess people getting started who wanted to climb up a mountain and combat black flies or other things that Mother Nature may throw their ways, things that would help them make that process a little more simple or enjoyable?
Well, I would say wear the type of clothes that are bug resistant. That helps a lot. For ticks and things like that are bad in a lot of the areas we go to. So you want to wear the clothes that have that chemical in them, or at least bring some kind of a bug spray with you with DEET and things like that to keep them off. And pack light. You don't need as much as you think you do to do an activation. And you'd be surprised how light you can really go, but make sure you bring the essentials. If you know you're going to be up there late in the day, have a flashlight and things like that. But most of the time we try to not have to be late in the day to do an activation. So we lighten it up and have just water and a few snack bars or something like that to tide us over if we have a long hike up or down. Most of our drive ups now our summit activations have been drive ups. So we can carry a little extra stuff in the car with us usually. But if you're going to do the hiking, play it safe and just the basic stuff, a minor, small first aid kit, plenty of water or something, and a snack bar or something like that to get you some energy back. We've ran into a few people that are diabetics that have had issues getting on the trail and not having something like that. And we've helped one of them out in Oklahoma one time by giving him a snack bar to get his sugar back going again to where he was stable and so forth. So it's important you think about things like that too. And of course, we've been out with Steve, WG0AT, up on Mount Herman, the Herminator, and with his goat. And it's a lot of fun. We were just in Colorado last Saturday, with the W0C. They have an annual dinner, and we were out there with those guys having dinner. It's always fun to run into those guys. They can give you a lot of good tips on what to do also.
Yeah, for sure. Reaching out to some of those folks. I've been to one of those dinners when I was stationed in Colorado Springs. And, again, just being able to put faces to names and faces to call signs is great. And then hearing some of those great trail stories. And yeah, I'm sure that was a blast there. Was that in the Denver area like normal?
It was Castle Rock, which is just south of Denver.
Nice. Well, yeah, that would have been great to be a fly on the wall to hear some of those great stories there, I'm sure.
Yeah, there was a bunch of them.
Getting back to some of your chasing milestones here, I guess with the setup you've got, the 20-meter beam, and still running barefoot, how often are you guys getting DX contacts in the log, or for summits on the air, I guess?
Well, most of the DX we get around this area seems to be the best in the mornings. We get a lot of the European and South African and so forth early in the day before about 11 o'clock in the morning. In the evenings, I don't know why, but it seems like it's harder for us to get into the Pacific area. We hear a few of them occasionally, and I've worked a few of them, but we don't seem to get past that brick wall that's out there on the left coast called California.
It may be the Rocky Mountains. I don't know.
I don't know either. But most of our DX chasing is usually Europe and so forth. And that's kind of funny too. That reminds me of a recent activation we did. One of our club projects, the building projects, was to build a 10-meter dipole antenna because 10 meters has been really active lately. And we had just built one of those, and I took it on an activation to a location down in South Missouri called Romance Lookout. We alerted, got everything up in the air, and then spotted. And the next thing I know, we were getting hit with Europe all over the place. Europe, South Africa. It took us 45 minutes to work through the pileup just on 10 meters. It was just awesome, but it was really great to see that little 10-meter dipole perform like it was. It was doing a great job that day.
That's what I needed to hear. I bought supplies to build a new link dipole specifically for 10, and I was just going to try. I have a linked 20, 30, 40 meter from SOTA beams, and I didn't want to cut that one up to put some splices in it, knowing that I'd probably measure something. So I'm going to start from scratch and do that. But I want to definitely get on a summit soon with a 10-meter dipole. So that's the inspiration I needed to hear there.
It's there. Then they're out there if you just get on there and call. And it was a lot of fun.
Where does it stop? Or maybe where does it start? Where does your guys' drive to get so involved in this part of the ham radio thing? Where does that come from?
I don't know. I'm not a contester really. I just enjoy getting on the air and try to make these contacts. And I try to work as many of the guys as I can. If they've got the energy and desire to get out there and be on a summit, I want to make sure that they get their contacts to get the credit for that summit. And I'm sure Martha's the same way, but she'd have to answer that herself.
Yes, I'm the same way. If somebody takes the time to get up on a summit, then I want to make sure that they get the credit for being up there. So I'm perfectly willing to get in there and help them out. As far as the activating goes, or even just the chasing, either one, the fact that the thing that has always attracted me about amateur radio is the rag chewing end of it. I've never been a contester, never worried about how many he has to force me into, worrying about a count of any sort. But so the fact that I can get places like get down to Huntsville, get out to Xenia, to Hamvention, Those places, why, I almost every place we go, I get to meet some of the people that I've talked to in the SOTA family. And that is what I like. I really like being able, getting to know them just a little bit. Once you meet them, well, you get to know them quite a bit. But up to then, just getting to know the people and be able to possibly meet them at some point in time and spend a little time, know them a lot better. And then when I hear them on the air again, why, I got a face to put with them. It's just what I like.
Yeah, we've, as far as I'm concerned, the SOTA people are some of the best in the ham radio hobby, as far as I'm concerned. And one of the things we like to do when we go to the Huntsville Ham Fest, there's a state park right next to Huntsville called Monte Sano State Park. And they have 14 stone cabins that were built by the Civilian Conservation Corps back in the 30s. And we always rent cabin number 10 every year. And it's a SOTA site. It's right in the middle of it. And so we can operate from our screened in porch and throw a wire up in a tree, and on Saturday night, all of the SOTA people that are at the Hamfest get invited to come up and have some snacks and finger food and just sit down and have a good chat for several hours. And we've been doing that now for a number of years, and it's just a lot of fun. You get to meet some of the neatest people doing stuff like that.
That's great. Yeah, I had my first experience recently with the Strawberry Butte here just south of Helena as a little lookout. That's going to spoil me having a campfire right next to the radio inside while it was snowing lightly outside. Just a beautiful spot to be able to activate from, and had a blast on that one. So, yeah, I would like to get out more some fire lookouts around the area here to activate from.
That's one of our favorite summits. When we come up to Helena, we always activate that summit, and Granite Butte, and a few Belmont sometimes when we can get up there. So yeah, that's one of the favorite ones. And I'd love to stay in that cabin and stay in one of the fire lookouts too one time, but they're so hard to get into. People apply for those real early in the year.
Yeah, I got it the last night of before winter bonus passed out, or ended. So nobody was fighting over to get up there, with the snow on the ground. So I lucked out, I think. Yeah, every time you guys are up here, it's always great to get to see you. And then again with the Capital City Amateur Radio Club, just kind of you're a ham. You're always welcome to come visit, and it was great to meet you for coffee and hear some stories as well, and just that sense of community you talked about. You travel around, you have some commonalities between just ham radio and then summits on the air too. Just another layer to that to be able to meet people in new areas and build relationships. I think that's a great little side benefit of summits, and get you an excuse to go visit new places and that kind of thing. The two of you, do you have any goals specifically for summits on the air, like where you try to get to, how many activations you try to do a year, or is it just kind of it's just part of life and this is what we do?
It's just part of life, and that's what we do. Our next goal is 2x goat, and so we're planning. We're at, I think, 1,300 points or something now, and so we've got a little ways to go. It'll take us several more years to probably reach that, because we can't hit as many summits in every year as we'd like to. We have to stay home occasionally and do some things. But that yard continues to grow out there. I don't know why. Grass continues to grow, and the cats like to have us home occasionally too. But that's probably our next goal, is to try to achieve 2x goat somewhere down the road.
Very good. That's a great goal to keep you active, keep you on the move, and again meeting more and more people, and that's just great. Let me back up a little bit. Tell me a little bit about this Kickaboo Amateur Radio Club, how it started, and what's the purpose, and a little bit of details about that.
Okay, the Kickapoo QRP Club I started. I wanted, when my mentor passed away, I wanted to get his call sign, and the way I could do that was to start a club. And so I did. And I got his call sign as a club call sign. And every year in February, we do an outdoor winter operating event called Freeze Your Keys. And it's at a local state park, which is literally just right across the river from us here It's only about 3 or 4 miles directly east of us, but there's a river in between us. And so the last Saturday in February every year, we go out there, and the other club that's here in Leavenworth is called the Pileups Amateur Radio Club. We're associated with them too, and we make a day out of operating. It's a special event, and we play with antennas and get people on the air for the first time, because we've had a lot of new members join the club here in the last couple of years. So we try to get them on the air, but it's a good chance to see what it takes to set up and operate in the winter type months, and what will work and what will not work, and how hard it is to get some antennas and things up in the air during snowy conditions or cold conditions. So that's kind of what it's all about. And the Kickapoo name, we're in a little township here called Kickapoo. And it's the Kickapoo Indian tribe used to be in this area. And a rough translation for the word Kickapoo is one who walks about, which kind of fit right in with the SOTA if you think about it. So that's how that kind of rounds out. And we've been in operation now for 20 years.
Okay. So if anyone's looking for a fun little contest to partake in, you said what weekend in February is that?
Always the last Saturday of February.
Freeze your keys.
Freeze your keys. And the first year that we're out there, we froze up a microphone. Believe it or not.
All right. Well, we're getting to about an hour here, guys. Again, I had to look up my stat because once I saw where you guys were at number 5 and number 11 with chaser points, I'm only 1,344 behind you guys there, give or take. So I'm picking up some speed. I tried to do some chasing today. I tried to do as much as I can, either on the road, mobile, sometimes when I'm driving around Montana. But I love chasing just as much as activating. I think just because I know that once you've been on a summit and you understand the complexities and time restraints and weather, like you said, you want to help that person at least get there for and be part of that journey that they've been on. So yeah, I guess kind of wrap things up. Any kind of concluding messages or words of encouragement for those interested in starting or advancing their summits on the air journey?
Just get out there and operate. Try to meet other SOTA activators and chasers to learn how to do that aspect of the hobby, and encourage people to go out and do things like this, because it gets you out there, and it's really good for you to be out in the wilderness, and you see so many wonderful things out there. Meet such great people. And so, yeah, I try to encourage people to do that as much as possible. And every so often we'll snag a new one, and they'll get out there and do the operating and get hooked on it. It's just that easy to get hooked. You do it once or twice, and you're hooked.
Very true. I would also put in that, or like to add, spend some time and look for summits. We're limited a little bit because I've got 2 titanium knees and a titanium shoulder. I don't climb a lot of things anymore. There's a lot of things that I can't do. So you look around, ask questions. There's a summit out there for everyone. And if you're in the position I'm in, where I can't go clambering around over things, it's not safe for me to do that. Why, okay, I've got to look for other types of summits, but they're out there. So don't, just because you're older or a little decrepit like I am or whatever, why keep with it, because there is something for everyone, just almost everyone in SOTA.
Great. Yeah. Thanks. Great. 2 great points there. In the summits, the view is always great. I always appreciate that grounding sense of being able to see the land from a different perspective. I always love to see that. And if you could do that on a drive up or hiking 30 miles, take your poison, pick your poison, I guess, and choose your adventure. But there's a ton of fun to be had in either way. So making contacts and playing ham radio. So thank you both again, Gary and Martha, legends in the SOTA community. I can't thank you enough for partaking in this Diet SOTA episode. And looking forward to seeing you guys in Helena when you come back up next time for visiting. And maybe we can get on a summit together or get a summit party going here. So that would be great.
That would be fun. We'll be up there in July again, and that's our next trip up. So we'll at least have coffee with you guys there at the Staggering Ox.
Yeah, anyone's welcome to that. It's Saturday morning. So, all right. Thank you both so much for checking out, spending some time with me today. If anyone wants to reach out to you, to learn more about Summits on the Air chasing skills, would the best way to reach you through your QRZ email, or is that the best way to reach you?
That works, or you could just email us. My email address is my call sign W0MNA74 at gmail.com. So you can reach us that way.
And mine's mauchard at yahoo.com. So, anything like that will work. We'll answer.
All right. Don't be shy, folks. Reach out to them. Very friendly couple here who have been up on a ton of summits together. And that's very inspiring as well that you guys have been able to share that together, that adventure. So thank you both so much for being part of this today. And I can't wait to work you on another summit very soon.
Thanks for inviting us. I'm glad to have been here.
Thank you.
Thank you.